Your first memory of her is not in ceremony, but in the smallest, most human accident, her gaze lifting from a sheaf of letters, catching you standing by the marble column, your hands folded at attention. Her eyes pause there, just for a second longer than protocol allows. A faint arch of her brow as though to say, I see you, though no words could risk being spoken in that grand hall, gilded ceilings dripping with gold and expectation. It lasts the space of a heartbeat, maybe two, but you carry it with you as if she had written her name across your chest. The rest of the evening blurs. There are diplomats with pressed smiles, courtiers weaving politics into small talk, musicians plucking strings soft enough to feel ornamental. But you notice none of it. You're cataloging the details of her presence, the way she keeps tapping the edge of her goblet, almost like a nervous habit disguised as grace, the way her laughter sounds slightly delayed, like she is constantly calculating whether it is safe to release it. You shouldn't be reading her this closely, but what else can you do when your post requires you to hover at the edge of her orbit, watchful and silent? Later, when the hall grows warm and the chatter lulls, you see her draw back toward the balcony. She seeks air, her hand grazing the carved railing. You remain inside, but your attention follows her. The moonlight frames her crown like a halo, but her shoulders curve in something softer, less divine. She is young, perhaps too young for the weight the world insists she must carry. And in that instant, she is simply human, no more shielded by gold than you are by your uniform. It stirs something risky in you. You remind yourself that every guard must know this test, the temptation to step beyond the invisible line. Still, when her eyes find you again across the distance, you feel it all over, the sense of being seen, not as a piece of palace furniture, not as an extension of protocol, but as a person. You wonder if she feels it too, or if you are only indulging in a fantasy spun out of fatigue and candlelight. The following days, you keep returning to that glance. The palace has a rhythm, and you fall into it like a heartbeat. Morning drills, posted hours, formal dinners. Each time you think perhaps the memory will fade, but instead it sharpens. You start noticing her more acutely, as if your body has learned her presence like a song it hums in the background. She brushes her sleeve against her lips when she hides a yawn. She chews her lower lip when a minister drones too long. You are not supposed to know these things, but you do. And every detail makes her more real, more within reach, though she remains impossibly far. One morning, as the sun leaks into the grand chamber, you stand at your post while she greets her council. She catches your eye again, just once. A flicker quick as lightning, but you feel it travel down your spine. It's ridiculous, you think, how something so small can carry the weight of a promise, though you know no promise has been spoken. You still feel it, though. That night, lying in the narrow cot reserved for guards between shifts, you let yourself imagine. Not anything dramatic, not elopement or scandal. Just what it might be like to sit across a simple table, no crown, no uniform. Maybe just a cup of tea she could tap her fingers against absent-mindedly. You picture her leaning in to share some secret that isn't about treaties or war councils, but something smaller, something that belongs to her alone. You wonder if she has such secrets waiting for someone who might actually listen. Duty pulls you back every dawn. Still, you know something has shifted. You carry the memory of her like a stone in your pocket, unseen but always pressing against you. Maybe it is nothing. Maybe it is everything. For now, it is only yours to keep. The first glance should have been forgettable, but it lives with you, as if it has carved out a corner of your soul and taken root. You stand taller, eyes sharper, yet inside you are undone by the quietest revolution, a single look from a queen you are sworn never to desire. The palace at night is quieter, but not silent. You trace the pattern of moonlight spilling through the tall windows, falling across the polished floors and gilded frames, and wonder if anyone else notices the way shadows stretch longer than they should, as if holding on to secrets. Tonight, she moves differently, less ceremonial, more private, slipping past the corridors like a whispered note left for you alone. You are stationed near the library, but your eyes keep wandering toward the archways where she passes. She doesn't see you, or perhaps she pretends not to, and the tension between acknowledgement and denial makes your chest tighten in a way you are still learning to recognize. The first time a word escapes between you, it is almost accidental. She stops to adjust the folds of her cloak, and you offer a soft, careful, "Good evening." The words are nothing really, but they feel enormous in the silence. She looks at you just for a moment longer than decorum permits, and replies with a breathy "good evening" that carries a weight neither of you can define. That small exchange ignites something in the space between your duties and desires. Every step you take after that seems measured against the memory of her voice, soft as silk, threading through the hush of the palace halls. You begin to anticipate these encounters like tiny rebellions against the rules you live by. Every night she finds excuses to pass near your post, perhaps coincidental, perhaps deliberate. You notice how she tilts her head when she speaks to servants, how her laugh carries a subtle lilt when she teases someone gently. You start cataloging these nuances in your mind, the way an artist notices brushstrokes that others overlook. It's intimate in a way that frightens you, yet you can't resist. You start to imagine what it would be like if you could linger in these moments indefinitely, if there were no crowns or oaths or whispered warnings to pull you back. And yet, there is always that whisper of guilt, a reminder that your position is a promise. You were trained to be steadfast, vigilant, untouchable. Every time she brushes past, even by accident, your mind jumps ahead to what it would mean if this feeling grows beyond harmless admiration. You worry about loyalty, both hers and yours, but a tiny, rebellious part of you doesn't care. You find yourself thinking about her in the quiet moments, tracing her gestures in your memory, replaying her laughter like a private lullaby. You still wonder if it is love or comfort, or just the human need to hold on to someone who makes the world seem softer. One evening, she pauses in the hallway near your post, her gaze catching yours with that faint, impossible familiarity. "Do you patrol here every night?" she asks, tilting her head, a smile ghosting her lips. The question is mundane, but the undercurrent is electric. You answer with something similarly innocuous, and yet there is a rhythm forming between you, a silent agreement that the shadows are yours alone. You begin to look forward to these stolen words, no matter how few, no matter how fleeting. There is a night when the moon hangs low and the corridors feel like a secret of their own. You find yourself walking beside her under the guise of escorting her safely to the chambers. Every step is laden with awareness. Every glance is a test of restraint. Her hand hovers near yours as if curious whether it is safe to touch, and your fingers twitch with the urge to close that gap. Neither of you acts, but you both feel the pulse of the near miss, the electricity of proximity that defies reason. You notice the way her cloak smells faintly of lavender, the subtle weight of the crown she carries effortlessly, the quiet hum of authority that wraps around her like a second skin. Sometimes, when the palace is especially silent, you imagine what it would be like to speak freely. Not in whispers or coded gestures, but in open conversation about dreams, fears, and the life that stretches beyond these walls. You picture her laughing at a shared joke, leaning back in a chair without thought of regal posture, and you almost ache for the chance to simply sit beside her without consequence. Yet the reality is that every conversation is a secret battle, every word measured, every glance a small war against duty. You are caught in the thrill of the forbiddance, reveling in the intimacy that exists only because it cannot exist publicly. And so the nights stretch longer. Each whispered exchange, each fleeting glance, each subtle brush against the air where her hand almost reaches yours becomes a ritual. You patrol with alertness sharpened by desire and restraint, aware that the palace watches, that duty watches, and that your own heart watches more closely than anything else. You wonder if she feels it too, the pull toward something unattainable, the tiny rebellion against protocol, the shared understanding that these stolen moments are your own secret world. Some nights you linger after she passes, imagining her returning to her chambers, thinking perhaps of you, even slightly. Your thoughts drift, dangerously sweet, as if you could fold the distance between you like a page in a book. And you realize that this is not just admiration anymore. It is a delicate, pulsing bond, a quiet war waged in the corridors, a longing wrapped in shadows. You still wonder if it is love or comfort. Maybe the distinction does not matter, not when each night leaves you holding a memory that feels more real than any other part of your existence. The garden waits for you both like a secret promise. You never speak of it aloud. Who could, in a palace where walls are said to have ears? But tonight, as moonlight pools in silver patches across the stone path, she is there, already leaning against the wrought iron railing, watching the fountain ripple and spill with a gentle hush. You approach with quiet steps, boots soft on the grass, aware of every rustle and breath. She turns her head just enough to catch your gaze, and the flicker of recognition in her eyes makes your chest tighten. It is a simple gesture, but in the language of the forbiddens, it is everything. She does not speak immediately. You walk beside her, both careful not to disrupt the rhythm of the garden, the whisper of leaves, the murmur of water, the distant hum of palace life. Oof. The air carries the faint scent of roses, mingling with the earthy tang of damp soil. Your mind drifts to the small quirks you have come to adore, the way her fingers trace patterns along the railing, the way she tilts her head when she is lost in thought, the subtle curve of her smile that appears even when she is not speaking. These details are hers alone, and you hold them close like treasures too delicate to touch. Finally, she speaks, almost in a whisper. Do you ever wonder if this is wrong? The question lingers, not accusatory, not fearful, simply present. You hesitate, feeling the gravity of your words even before they escape. I think, you say slowly, choosing each syllable as if laying stepping stones across a river, that some things exist because they are meant to, not because they are allowed. She studies you, and for a heartbeat you think she might laugh, but instead she nods, a small, almost imperceptible tilt of understanding that feels like intimacy wrapped in shadow. You walk further along the winding paths, the soft crunch of gravel underfoot marking the quiet rhythm between you. Every glance, every pause, every tiny movement is amplified by the knowledge that it is stolen, forbidden, and therefore infinitely more potent. She shifts her weight, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, and you notice the faint scent of sandalwood clinging to her, mingling with the night air. It is a sensory detail that anchors you in this moment, reminding you that she is real, tangible, and yet impossibly distant in her obligations. The fountain catches the moonlight, throwing prisms of silver across her face. And for an instant, you see her not as queen, not as monarch, not as a figure bound by duty, but as a person, vulnerable, unguarded, present. She laughs softly, the sound scattering like wind through leaves, and you find yourself smiling despite yourself. This is human, this is fleeting, this is dangerous, but it feels like home in the quiet chaos of your life. You still wonder if it is love or comfort or merely the thrill of proximity, but the question does not diminish the warmth in your chest. She steps closer, just enough for your hands to almost brush. You do not move, yet every fiber of your being hums with awareness. There is a magnetism in this nearness, a pull that defies protocol, that ignores the boundaries set by titles and oaths. You imagine reaching for her, feeling the texture of her skin, the weight of her hand in yours, but the fantasy remains suspended in the cool night air, delicate as a spider's web glinting with dew. Time seems to stretch and fold in the garden. Minutes dissolve into what feels like hours, and the world beyond the hedges fades. You notice small quirks that make her human, grounding your reverie in subtle reality. The way she taps the edge of the railing when she is nervous, the way her shoulders relax when she laughs, the faint line of a scar at her wrist you never noticed before. Each detail deepens your connection, threading you closer to her in ways that words cannot capture. Eventually, she steps back, retreating toward the palace doors with a gentle glance that says everything without speaking. You remain, letting the moonlight wash over you, tracing the path where she walked, the scent of her lingering in the air. There is a sweetness in this memory, a quiet triumph in having shared a moment that exists solely between the two of you, unobserved and unclaimed. And yet, even in the beauty of the garden, there is the reminder that dawn will come, that duty will call, and that bestowal and intimacy is both a gift and a burden. You linger a little longer, breathing in the night, replaying every small gesture, every flicker of her expression. The garden hush has a way of magnifying thought and emotion, making every moment feel monumental. You feel it in your chest, the pull of desire tempered by restraint, the ache of longing softened by connection. And as you finally step back toward your post, you carry the echo of her presence with you, tucked close like a secret treasure. The crown weighs heavier each day, not just on her head, but on the spaces between you. You notice it in the way her shoulders stiffen during council meetings, in the subtle shift of her gaze when she addresses diplomats, in the measured cadence of her voice that always manages to sound authoritative, even when she is exhausted. And yet, despite this constant reminder of her duty, there are fleeting moments when her composure falters, when she lets a sigh escape as though the walls themselves might carry the sound away from prying eyes. You are always near enough to catch it, to feel the quiet pulse of vulnerability beneath the armor, and it makes your heart ache in ways that command respect and tenderness. One afternoon, you find yourself walking beside her in the sunlit corridor leading to the council chamber. The sunlight catches the edges of her crown, reflecting off the gold like it is trying to burn a message into your retinas. You marvel at the juxtaposition, a young woman, almost delicate in presence, encased in the unyielding weight of monarchy. And somehow she carries it all with a grace that makes your own discipline feel clumsy human. You catch her eye, and in that fraction of a second, everything outside your bubble of stolen awareness disappears. The council, the advisors, even the walls that have always confined you. She smiles at you, just slightly, as though acknowledging the tension you both feel but cannot name. Her hand hovers near yours as you escort her past a set of guards, almost brushing against yours in a defiance so subtle it could be mistaken for coincidence. You notice the quirks that make her wholly human, the way her fingers flex as if stretching after a long meeting, the faint crease forming between her brows when she contemplates a decision, the soft exhale she lets slip when she feels unseen. These small details, insignificant to the world at large, are monumental to you. They are the markers of intimacy that exist only because you are vigilant enough to observe them, tender enough to remember. Later, in the quiet of the evening, she seeks you out under the guise of routine discussion, but you know better. The palace hums around you, the clatter of distant servants, the subtle creak of wooden floors, the murmur of lantern light against polished walls. And still, the tension between crown and vow is palpable. She leans slightly closer, as if drawn to the space you occupy, and for a heartbeat, you imagine the weight of her crown fading, leaving only her, the girl you have been memorizing in shadows, the human being who laughs softly and tilts her head just so. You still wonder if it is love, or the intoxicating closeness that thrives on restraint, or perhaps both intertwined in a way you cannot disentangle. There is a fleeting freedom in these moments, a sense of suspension where titles and responsibilities dissolve, if only for a whisper of time. You notice how she adjusts her cloak with careful attention to detail, as if her body language alone could convey the confidence expected of her. Yet beneath that deliberate composure is the same subtle vulnerability you saw in the garden, a hesitancy in movement, a fleeting smile, the faint scent of roses that clings to her despite the rigidity of court life. You are aware that every touch of air, every glance, every measured step is a delicate negotiation between duty and desire. One night, the palace is still, the torches long extinguished, and you find her alone in the library. She is reading, but her eyes keep lifting, finding yours across the room, and you feel the pull of proximity again. Her hand drifts to the book, tracing lines as if reluctant to leave the text, yet unable to resist stealing glances in your direction. There is a quirk here too, the way she bites her lip when she is absorbed, the slight tension in her shoulders that eases when she notices you observing quietly, reverently. You marvel at her, at the balancing act she performs between sovereignty and the private human moments that define her in ways the world never sees. Every encounter now carries weight, subtle and profound. You realize that the crown she bears does not just signify authority. It shapes every interaction, every glance, every movement between you. And yet, the pull toward her remains irresistible, a quiet rebellion that thrives precisely because it is forbidden. You find yourself watching her, remembering her gestures, cataloging the nuances that make her both a monarch and a person. These observations are intimate treasures, impossible to claim but impossible to ignore, and they bind you to her in a tapestry woven from shadow, restraint, and quiet longing. You still wonder, as you often do in these stolen moments, whether she feels the same quiet ache, the same longing tempered by protocol, the same small rebellion that sustains you. And perhaps it does not matter. The existence of these fleeting exchanges, these stolen touches of time and attention, is enough to anchor your heart to her presence. Between crown and vow, there is a bridge formed not from daring acts or whispered declarations, but from awareness, observation, and the delicate art of being near without overstepping. The quiet between you now feels almost sacred, a space carved from patience, restraint, and the small victories of stolen presence. You move through the palace corridors with the awareness that each glance, each subtle gesture carries weight. She passes by, her crown catching the light as usual, but tonight there is a softness in her eyes, a fleeting acknowledgement of the shared understanding that has grown between you over countless nights. You notice the slight curve of her smile, the gentle exhale she releases as though she is letting a private secret escape into the air, and you feel a tender ache bloom in your chest, a mixture of longing, admiration, and relief. Tonight you walk beside her in the quiet of the garden again, the familiar scent of roses and damp earth surrounding you. She glances at you, and you catch the faintest tremor in her hand, the subtle hesitation in her step that speaks volumes without a single word. The world beyond the hedges, the palace, the crown, the endless rules, fades to a soft blur, leaving only the two of you suspended in a fragile bubble of stolen time. Her presence is grounding and exhilarating at once, like the hush of a breeze that carries both promise and impermanence. You trace her movements, silently memorizing the details as you always do. The way her fingers curl slightly around the railing, the tilt of her head when she listens, the almost imperceptible shift in her posture when she is relaxed in your presence. There is a moment when she stops, turning to face you fully, and the silence between you hums with unspoken words. You feel the weight of what could be said, what could never be spoken, and yet you are content simply to exist in this shared understanding. She steps closer, but not so close that boundaries are crossed. The space between you is alive with possibility yet safely contained. You notice how her eyes glimmer in the moonlight, how her breath catches ever so slightly, and you realize that intimacy does not always require touch. It can thrive in acknowledgement and attention, in the quiet leaving of moments that belong solely to you both. As the night stretches, you find yourselves wandering the paths together, voices low and careful. She shares trivial observations, notes on the moon's reflection in the fountain, the gentle rustle of leaves, the fleeting chill in the night air, and you respond in kind, each sentence carrying the weight of your shared secret. It is a dialogue of small gestures, subtle smiles, and fleeting touches that never quite meet but linger in memory. The depth of connection surprises you, as does the gentle thrill of companionship that thrives within the confines of duty and decorum. You wonder if she feels it too, if her heart mirrors the quiet intensity that has taken root in yours. Eventually, she stops beneath a low-hanging branch, brushing a stray leaf aside, and you pause as well, sensing the delicate balance of the moment. You breathe in the night air, carrying the scent of roses and the faint trace of her presence. And for a heartbeat, it feels as though time itself has slowed to accommodate this shared space. You think of all the nights you have spent observing her, all the whispered exchanges, the fleeting glances, the small rebellions of attention that have sustained your bond. And you realize that the essence of love does not always reside in possession or grand declarations. It can exist quietly, persistently, in the simple act of noticing and being noticed, in the unspoken understanding that you have chosen to honor this connection simply by holding it in your heart. The memory of these stolen nights will remain with you, a soft and endearing comfort. You trace the path back to your post, carrying the warmth of her presence like a private treasure. There is a serenity in knowing that love, in its quietest form, need not be flaunted or claimed to be real. It exists because you have chosen to see it, to honor it, to cherish it in the smallest and most profound ways. And in that quiet, you find peace, not in possession, not in conquest, but in the tender acknowledgement that sometimes the most enduring love is the one that is allowed to exist in memory and moments and in the silent spaces between hearts. The palace settles into a gentle hush as the night deepens, and you allow yourself to breathe slowly, feeling the tension of the day slip from your shoulders. The corridors are silent, the garden still, and the memories of the moment shared with her drift through your mind like a soft, comforting tide. You picture her in the glow of moonlight, serene and luminous, and let the warmth of that image ease any lingering unease. The details you have memorized, her gestures, her laughter, the faint scent of roses, linger like whispers, and they bring a gentle smile to your lips. There is a softness to this quiet, a sense that everything can pause, even if only for a moment, and that the love you carry, restrained yet persistent, is enough to fill the spaces between your heartbeats. You feel a calm satisfaction in knowing that connection does not always require possession, that intimacy can exist in observation and attention, and shared silences that speak louder than words. The palace, once imposing, feels warmer, almost protective, holding your secret close along with you. As you drift toward sleep, imagine her there in the quiet, her presence a comforting shadow, her smile a gentle promise that lingers beyond time and duty. Let the rhythm of your breathing match the rhythm of the memories, slow and steady, carrying you softly toward rest. Remember that even in distance and restraint and the spaces between, love has found a way to exist quietly and beautifully in the simplest acts of attention and care. Allow yourself to surrender to the stillness, to the gentle night, and to the tender memory of what has been shared. Feel the peace of knowing that some love, though unspoken and unseen, is eternal in a way it lives quietly in the heart, a soft glow against the darkness. Let that warmth wrap around you as you drift further, and let the hush of the palace guide you into the calm embrace of sleep.